Commander Vorath stood before 300 cadets and watched their fear begin exactly on schedule. That was how he knew the lesson was working. The proving hall had gone dim. Blue light pooled over the armored seats, turning every young officer candidate into a silent outline of claws, tendrils, shells, and nervous eyes. No one spoke. No one shifted. They had all arrived believing their simulation scores meant something. Vorath was about to take that belief away. "You think you understand combat?" he said. His mandibles clicked once, and the front row flinched. "You think a clean exercise and a few heroic instinct tests mean you are ready to stand under real fire? You are not. Most of you are not even ready to understand what real fire does to the mind before it touches the body." The silence tightened. Vorath turned toward the enormous projection wall behind him. This was the necessary cruelty of training. Break the fantasy early, and fewer cadets died later pretending courage was the same as competence. He pressed one clawed finger to the control panel. "What you are about to see is recovered helmet footage from the Battle of Kresh Station. 42 ships lost. Over 9,000 confirmed casualties. Defensive line collapse in under 6 hours." A small sound leaked from the third row. Vorath approved. Fear was not weakness. Fear was information. "The soldier who recorded this did not survive," he said. "That is not unusual." The wall ignited. First came smoke. Then screaming. Then motion so violent the camera could barely hold a horizon. The unknown soldier wearing the helmet sprinted through a ruined corridor as plasma fire sliced the air ahead of him. Blast light turned the smoke white, then blue, then black again. Bodies lay where cover had failed. Somewhere out of frame, someone begged for a medic until artillery swallowed the voice. Several cadets lowered their heads. Vorath did not let them. Eyes forward. The camera lurched as the soldier dove behind a broken support pillar. A wall collapsed in the distance, folding into flame. Through the gap came a Kresh heavy assault unit, taller than a transport shuttle, its cannon arms rotating with mechanical patience. Every pulse from its weapons erased another defensive position. "This," Vorath said, "is what happens when formation discipline breaks." He watched the cadets, not the screen. Their faces were better data than the footage. One had stopped blinking. Another gripped the edge of his seat until the material began to crack. The lesson was entering them now, crawling past pride and settling somewhere permanent. Then Vorath noticed the back row. One figure had not changed posture. Harold, the human liaison, sat with one arm draped across the seat in front of him, looking mildly inconvenienced by the entire apocalypse. His graying hair was neat. His olive military jacket hung open over a black turtleneck. His expression suggested he was waiting for a meeting to end so he could go find coffee. Vorath's sensory hairs stiffened. Humans did this. They treated disaster as weather, rules as suggestions, and mortal danger as an annoying scheduling problem. Still, there was a line between composure and disrespecting a combat memorial. Vorath opened his mouth to correct him. A cadet spoke first. "Commander!" The voice came from the front row. Shaking but not weak. Vorath did not turn fully. "What? Can you go back?" His mandibles clicked in irritation. "This is not entertainment." "I know," the cadet said, pointing at the projection with one trembling appendage. "But behind the collapsed wall, I saw someone." Vorath froze. Then he rewound the footage. Smoke reversed. Fire pulled itself back into weapons. The helmet camera returned to the soldier's desperate run across open ground. "There?" the cadet whispered. Vorath paused. At first, the screen showed only what it was supposed to show. Plasma. Rubble. Impact dust. Certain death arranged in every direction. Then his 8 eyes found the wrong thing. Far behind the broken wall, half hidden by smoke, a human was walking through the battlefield. Not running. Not crawling. Walking. He held a toolbox in one hand. His other hand was in his pocket. Around him, plasma fire crossed so thickly it looked like glowing rain. Behind him, an explosion bloomed large enough to flatten a vehicle bay. The human did not look back. Vorath enlarged the image. The pixels broke apart, then sharpened just enough. olive jacket, black turtleneck, graying hair. Harold. The proving hall went silent. Slowly, every eye, lens, stalk and sensory organ in the room turned from the frozen image on the wall to the back row. Harold looked up. He noticed the entire training class staring at him. Then he gave a small, apologetic wave. For several seconds, nobody breathed. Vorath stared at Harold, then at the projection, then back again, as if one of them might politely stop existing and restore order to the universe. Harold lowered his hand. "That is not possible," Vorath said. His voice had lost the steel he used in training. It came out thinner, scraped raw by disbelief. Harold shifted in his seat. "Oh, Creche Station." The cadets reacted like he had named a childhood picnic site. Vorath turned one slow step toward him. "You recognize this battlefield." "Rough assignment," Harold said. One cadet made a faint choking sound. Vorath pointed at the frozen image on the wall. "You are walking through an active kill zone while a Creche heavy assault unit fires across open ground." Harold squinted at the screen. "Yeah, that was the East Ridge." The East Ridge had a 0% survival projection. "Well," Harold said, "not 0. Vorath's mandibles stopped moving entirely. That frightened the cadets more than the footage. Vorath's species clicked when angry, rattled when impatient, and hissed when threatened. Silence meant the mind had reached a wall and was deciding whether to climb it or break itself against it. He moved back to the console and dragged up the official battle overlay. Red casualty zones spread across the map like infection. One sector flashed darker than the rest. East Ridge. Constant bombardment. Defensive collapse. No confirmed survivors. Vorath zoomed the helmet footage again. Harold remained there, calmly passing behind a ruined barrier with a toolbox swinging at his side. "What were you doing?" Vorath asked. "Delivering replacement regulators to the artillery crew." "Through that. They needed them." A murmur moved through the hall. Not admiration yet. Something more unstable. The beginning of a belief that had nowhere safe to sit. Vorath sharpened the image further. Behind Harold, a Creche cannon blast tore open the ground where he had been walking 3 seconds earlier. "You should have died there," Vorath said. Harold tilted his head. "I changed lanes. This is not traffic." "No, but the principle works." Vorath rewound again, farther this time. The helmet camera shook. The unknown soldier ran. Plasma fire stormed across the field. And there, in the background, Harold stepped over a fallen support beam, paused, looked down, and bent to pick something from the rubble. Vorath froze the frame. "What?" he asked very carefully. "Is in your hand?" Harold looked embarrassed. "A wrench." The silence became physical. "You stopped during orbital bombardment," Vorath said, "to retrieve a wrench. It was a good wrench." A cadet in the second row whispered, "He went back." Harold glanced toward the cadets. "You cannot leave tools lying around. Someone could need that." Vorath felt his sensory hairs flatten against his plated skull. This was worse than arrogance. Arrogance could be disciplined. Recklessness could be punished. But Harold was not boasting. He looked genuinely uncomfortable, as if everyone else had made the situation strange by noticing. The projection wall still showed him kneeling in smoke, retrieving a hand tool while death missed him by fractions. Vorath turned off the audio. He needed less screaming in the room. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Then the side doors opened. Tactical Officer Bryn entered carrying a stack of data slates. Her translucent violet skin caught the blue light, and the thin tendrils that served as her hair drifted behind her like slow water. She took in the frozen screen, the staring cadets, Vorath's rigid posture, and Harold trying to disappear into the back row. Her 3 dark eyes narrowed. "Commander," she said, "why is Harold on the Creche Station footage?" Vorath did not look away from the screen. "I was hoping you would explain that." Bryn set the slates down very slowly. Harold raised one hand again. "I can explain," he said. Every face turned toward him. He cleared his throat. "Somebody put the supply route on the wrong side of the bombardment map." Nobody spoke. Harold shrugged. "So I used the other wrong side." Bryn did not blink for a very long time. Then she turned toward Vorath. "We need his service file." Harold's face changed instantly. Not with fear. With the tired discomfort of a man who had hoped nobody would make a meeting longer than necessary. "Is that really needed?" "Yes," Vorath and Bryn said together. The cadets began whispering again. The sound moved through the proving hall like insects under a floor. Vorath pointed toward the exit. "Archive chamber." "Now." Harold stood, adjusted his olive jacket, and walked down the aisle with both hands in his pockets. Every cadet leaned away as he passed, not because he looked dangerous, but because the idea of him had become dangerous. A human had walked through a battlefield used to break cadets. And he had looked bored doing it. The archive chamber was smaller than the proving hall, colder, and lit by green holographic storage columns that stacked military records from floor to ceiling. Bryn moved to the main console. Her fingers passed through floating menus with precise, nervous speed. Vorath stood behind her, his armored arms folded so tightly his plates scraped together. Harold leaned against the wall. "Can we keep this quick?" he asked. "I have a supply schedule." Vorath turned all 8 eyes toward him. "You have just been identified inside a combat recording where every projection says you should have died. Your schedule can wait." Harold considered that. The supplies probably can't. Bryn found the file. A human identification profile appeared above the console. Name, Harold Mercer. Species, human. Current assignment, logistics and supply coordination. Rank, liaison specialist. Active deployments, classified combat support. Bryn scrolled, then stopped. The movement was so sudden that even Harold looked over. "What?" Vorath asked. Bryn's bioluminescent markings pulsed once across her translucent skin. Then again. Then faster. "He has been deployed to 43 major combat events." Vorath clicked once. "Career personnel often rotate through multiple fronts." Bryn did not answer immediately. Her fingers moved through the file. One report opened. Then another. Then another. Red casualty projections filled the air around them. "No," she said quietly. "Not fronts." She turned her 3 eyes toward Harold. "Events." The first screen showed the siege of Vorath 7. 3 weeks behind enemy lines. 30,000 dead. No recovered survivors. Except one note at the bottom. Human support personnel present. Survived. The second screen showed the void breach incident. 40 ships lost after space folded inward across a repair dock. Entire crews erased from sensor reality. One note. Human logistics personnel recovered after breach collapse. Uninjured. The third showed the Thax nest containment failure. Biological toxin incompatible with organic tissue. Protective suits dissolved in under 1 minute. One note. Human personnel completed medical supply retrieval. Survived. Vorath stepped closer to the screens. His mandibles parted. "How?" Harold scratched the back of his neck. "Which one?" Bryn's voice rose. "Any of them." Harold pointed toward the void breach record. That one was mostly just holding onto a support beam until gravity stopped arguing with itself. Vorath slowly turned his head. Gravity was arguing with itself. "Not literally," Harold said. "It just felt like that." Bryn opened the Thax nest report. This environment dissolved armored containment drones. "I had sealant tape." Vorath stared. Harold continued, as if that answered everything. "My suit kept leaking, so I patched it while walking. It was annoying but manageable." Bryn's tendrils went still. The archive chamber hummed around them. Vorath looked at the 43 casualty records floating in the air. Each one was a graveyard written in numbers. Each one had the same impossible human footnote. He lowered his voice. "Harold." The human looked up. "What are you?" Harold did not answer immediately. Not because he was hiding something. Because he looked genuinely unsure what kind of answer Vorath wanted. "I'm logistics," he said. Bryn made a small sound and pressed both hands against the console. "That is not what he means." Vorath brought up every visual archive linked to Harold's file. The chamber filled with screens. 43 incidents opened around them like windows into separate endings of the universe. On one screen, Harold crossed a hangar while ships exploded behind him. On another, he carried 2 medical crates through a corridor where radiation warning signs were melting off the walls. On another, a creature the size of a transport tower tore through a platoon in the distance. Harold passed behind it with a clipboard under his arm. He did not run. He did not even look especially interested. Bryn watched the creature turn slightly away from him. "It did not see you," she whispered. "It was eating," Harold said. "I didn't want to interrupt." Vorath sat down on the floor. He did not mean to. His legs simply decided the situation no longer supported standing. The commander of survival instruction, veteran of 14 campaigns, architect of the Academy's fear conditioning program, sat beneath a ring of holographic disasters and stared up at a man who had survived all of them by behaving like the universe was an inconvenient hallway. Bryn continued opening files. "Caldress Station," she said. "System destroyed by stellar ignition. All evacuation ships lost before jump." "Most of them," Harold corrected. Bryn's 3 eyes locked on him. "Your ship survived because?" Harold looked down. "I dropped my identification badge." Voratha's mandibles clicked once, very softly. Harold continued. "First shuttle filled while I was picking it up. I had to take the second. The first one got hit." Bryn's light patterns flashed so fast they lost rhythm. "You survived a star system death because you were slow retrieving a badge." "I wasn't slow. It slid under a bench." Vorath covered his face with both hands. The archive chamber fell quiet except for the low hum of records and the soft flicker of impossible evidence. Harold shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the attention. "I don't understand why everyone is reacting like this," he said. "Most of it was normal field work." Vorath dropped his hands. "Normal field work?" Harold pointed at the screens. "People need things during disasters. Ammunition, medicine, power cells, regulators, clean filters. If they don't get them, more people die." Bryn's tendrils slowly stopped moving. That was the first answer that did not sound absurd. Vorath looked from the casualty reports to the delivery logs. For the first time, he stopped tracking where Harold had survived and began tracking what Harold had carried. Medical supplies reached field hospitals minutes before collapse. Replacement regulators restored artillery long enough to hold a flank. Emergency filters arrived in sealed shelters before toxins breached the doors. Harold was not present at 43 disasters. He had walked into 43 disasters because someone inside them needed something. Vorath stood very slowly. The room seemed colder now. "You volunteered for these routes." Harold's expression tightened. "Sometimes." "How many times?" Harold looked away. Bryn checked the files. Her voice dropped. 39. Vorath said nothing. On the largest screen, Harold walked through crash station smoke with a toolbox in his hand while plasma crossed behind him like burning rain. For the first time, Vorath did not see stupidity in the image. He saw a man counting on the fact that fear could wait until after the delivery. Vorath replayed the crash footage again. This time, he did not watch the explosions. He watched Harold. The human moved through the battle with a strange economy, never fast enough to look desperate, never slow enough to waste time. When plasma fire crossed his path, he waited half a breath and stepped after it. When debris fell, he angled his shoulder before it struck the ground. When the helmet camera spun in terror, Harold remained in the background like a fixed point the battle could not quite touch. Bryn leaned closer to the projection. "He is not ignoring the danger," she said. Vorath did not answer. Harold looked uncomfortable. "I said I pay attention." "No," Bryn whispered. "You pay attention to different things." She opened the route data and laid it over the combat footage. Lines appeared in the air, showing projected kill zones, blast radii, troop movement, supply paths, artillery needs, collapsing structures, and active communication dead zones. The Academy survival model showed 3 possible routes across Crash Station. All fatal. Harold's actual path appeared in yellow. It did not match any route. It bent through places the model had ignored because they were not safe, only temporarily less lethal. A maintenance trench blocked from overhead fire for 11 seconds. A collapsed wall that absorbed 2 cannon pulses before failing. A debris shadow that hid him from thermal targeting because the metal was still burning hotter than his body. Bryn turned slowly toward him. You were calculating all of this? Harold frowned. No. Vorath's voice came out flat. Then how did you choose the path? Harold pointed at the screen. That wall was still standing, so I used it. That trench was pointed the right way. The big machine kept firing left because its right leg was damaged. You can see the drag marks. Vorath zoomed in. There they were. Deep gouges in the ash. Almost invisible under smoke and movement. A cadet would have missed them. Vorath had missed them. The Academy's model had missed them because the model had measured threat density, not irritation in an enemy machine's damaged gate. Bryn opened another incident. The facts nest. Harold's suit deterioration chart appeared beside his movement log. The predicted failure time was 53 seconds. Harold had lasted 6 hours. Show the suit repairs, Bryn said. The log expanded. Patch after patch. Pressure leak sealed. Joint breach sealed. Filter bypass improvised. Second leak sealed. Third leak sealed. Vorath stared at the sequence. You did not survive because the suit held, he said. Harold shrugged. No suit just holds. You have to keep helping it. Bryn's tendrils curled inward. Vorath understood then why the answer had been invisible. Every species trained survival as avoidance. Identify danger. Reduce exposure. Retreat from collapse. Preserve the body. Harold had treated survival like maintenance. A failing suit was not death. It was a system with a leak. A collapsing route was not impossible. It was a path with bad timing. A battlefield was not chaos. It was a workplace where the lights were out and everything was on fire. Vorath turned back to the screen. In every disaster, Harold had not escaped the impossible. He had repaired one small piece of it long enough to keep walking. The proving hall had changed by the time they returned. It no longer sounded like a classroom. It sounded like a religion trying to invent itself. Cadets crowded around Harold's empty seat. Some were photographing it. One was kneeling beside the armrest, studying the faint pressure mark where Harold's elbow had rested during the footage. Another had both hands around the chair's base and was trying to tear it from the floor. Vorath stopped in the doorway. For one dangerous moment, no one noticed him. Explain, he said. The room froze. The cadet holding the chair released it so quickly he fell backward. Harold stepped in behind Vorath, still carrying the same tired expression of a man delayed by paperwork. The cadets saw him and went completely silent. Not disciplined silent. Worshipful silent. Vorath hated it immediately. A young cadet in the front row raised one trembling appendage. Is it true? Harold looked at Vorath. Vorath closed his eyes. Harold sighed. Which part? Creche Station. Morath 7. The Void Breach. The Fax Nest. Caldress. The cadet swallowed. All of it. Harold nodded once. Yes. The word moved through the hall like pressure through water. Another cadet stood. How? Harold looked at the hundreds of faces staring at him. He did not straighten. He did not pose. He did not use the moment to become larger than he was. I stayed calm, he said. I watched what was actually happening, not what I was afraid was happening. Then I did the next useful thing. No one moved. Harold rubbed one thumb against the edge of his jacket pocket. That's mostly it. Vorath almost laughed, but nothing came out. A cadet with silver breathing vents along her neck leaned forward. But what if the next useful thing is walking into death? Harold looked at the frozen battlefield still glowing on the projection wall. Then check if it is really death, he said. Sometimes it's just smoke, noise, and bad timing. Bryn, standing beside Vorath, went very still. The cadets absorbed the sentence like it had struck them. Vorath did too, and that irritated him even more. He had spent 15 years teaching cadets to survive by respecting danger. Harold was not disrespecting it. Harold was doing something worse. He was refusing to treat danger as a command. A warning is, the condition is, but not an order. One cadet whispered, "Can he train us?" No, Vorath said instantly. Every face turned to him. His mandibles clicked once. He is not an instructor. Harold nodded, relieved. Vorath continued. He is evidence. Harold stopped nodding. Bryn looked at him sharply. Vorath walked to the projection wall and stood beneath the frozen image of Harold crossing the battlefield. You will not copy his luck, he said. You will not follow him into kill zones and expect the universe to make exceptions. The universe made no exception for the 9,000 dead behind him. The hall went cold. They needed that. But you will study what he saw that our models missed. You will study why he moved when others froze. You will study why he carried tools into hell instead of prayers. Harold looked down at the floor. For the first time, the cadets stopped looking at him like a miracle. They looked at him like a question. Vorath pointed at the screen. And we begin with this. Fear is data. It is not leadership. The first exercise was supposed to be simple. A controlled emergency simulation. Smoke, falling debris, false plasma bursts, broken communications, and a supply objective placed on the far side of a collapsing training zone. No live weapons. No real casualties. No actual battlefield. By Academy standards, it was gentle. By the cadets' expressions, it was the end of civilization. Harold stood at the starting line holding a small crate of replacement power cells. Vorath watched from the observation deck with Bryn beside him. Begin, Vorath said. The chamber erupted. Smoke poured from the floor. Warning lights flashed. Metal panels crashed down from the ceiling on timed release. The cadets scattered exactly as their fear told them to scatter, diving behind cover, shouting over each other, wasting seconds trying to decide which danger mattered most. Harold did not move for 3 heartbeats. Then he stepped left. A panel slammed down where the cadets had expected the safest route to be. Harold walked past it. A burst of simulated plasma crossed the corridor ahead of him. He waited, counted under his breath, then crossed after the third pulse. One cadet tried to follow. Harold caught his sleeve without looking. Not yet. A second later, the fourth pulse struck the exact space the cadet would have entered. The cadet went pale. Harold kept walking. Vorath leaned toward the glass. He counted the firing rhythm, Bryn said. No, Vorath murmured. He counted the delay after the damaged emitter stuttered. On the floor below, Harold reached a blocked passage. 2 cadets started dragging at the largest piece of debris, panicking, wasting strength. Harold set the crate down, picked up a smaller broken bracket, and pulled it loose. The entire obstruction shifted just enough to open a narrow gap. You don't move the wall, Harold said. You find what the wall is leaning on. The cadets stared. Crate, he reminded them. They scrambled after him. By the end of the exercise, Harold had delivered the power cells in 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The Academy's best tactical model had predicted 7 minutes under ideal performance. None of the cadets cheered. That was what made Vorath pay attention. They were too unsettled to cheer. They had watched Harold do nothing heroic. No charge. No speech. No glorious defiance. He had simply noticed small things while everyone else worshipped the big danger. A vent pulling smoke sideways. A flicker in a weapon light. A beam not fully settled. A frightened cadet breathing too fast to hear orders. Vorath looked down at his old curriculum on the console. Then he deleted the first lesson. Bryn turned to him. What will replace it? Vorath watched Harold hand the crate to the target officer and ask whether anyone had water. Observation before courage, he said. Harold left before anyone could turn the exercise into a ceremony. That was the detail Vorath remembered later. Not the silent cadets. Not the broken curriculum. Not the new fear in the room, sharper and cleaner than the old kind. Harold simply checked the time, apologized for being late, picked up his jacket, and said he had a supply run to Helix 4. Bryn's tendrils stopped moving. The quarantine zone? Harold nodded. They're low on filters. Vorath stared at him. 3 ships have vanished inside that gravity anomaly in the last month. Right? Harold said. That's probably why they're low on filters. No one laughed. The cadets watched him walk toward the exit with the same frozen attention they had once given the battlefield footage. Harold paused at the door, turned back, and seemed surprised by the silence. "What?" A cadet in the front row stood. "Are you afraid?" Harold looked uncomfortable with the question. He glanced toward Vorath, then Bryn, then the crate manifest in his hand. "Yes," he said. The answer struck the room harder than denial would have. Harold rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm afraid most of the time." The cadets did not move. "But fear is loud," Harold said. "It isn't always useful. So I check the straps, read the route, fix what I can, and go where the supplies are needed." He gave them a small nod and left. No slogan. No salute. No final speech. Just footsteps fading down the hall. Vorath did not follow at first. He stood beneath the projection wall, where Harold's battlefield image still glowed in frozen smoke. For the first time, the commander understood why the picture had bothered him so deeply. The human was not calm because he lacked fear. He was calm because fear had failed to earn command. A launch alarm sounded beyond the academy walls. Bryn pulled up the tracking feed without being asked. Harold's supply shuttle lifted from Bay 9, a small gray craft with too much cargo and not enough armor. Its flight path curved toward Helix 4, where the anomaly waited like a wound in space. The cadets gathered behind them. Vorath should have ordered them away. He did not. The shuttle reached the outer distortion field. The tracking line flickered. Static crawled across the screen. Warning markers bloomed red around the projected route. Bryn whispered, "Signal loss boundary in 5 seconds." Vorath's mandibles clicked once. 4, 3, 2. The signal vanished. No one spoke. The hall held its breath. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. A young cadet made a small sound and covered his mouth. Vorath looked at the empty tracking grid and felt something old move inside his chest. Not panic. He had buried panic long ago. This was worse. It was the first fragile pressure of wanting the universe to prove him wrong. Bryn's light patterns dimmed across her body. Then the console beeped. A signal returned on the far side of the anomaly. Harold's shuttle emerged, still moving, still on course, its cargo manifest intact except for one note added manually. Gravity was strange near marker 7. Recommend tightening loose crates. The cadets stared at the message. Bryn sat down slowly on the nearest step. Vorath remained standing, but only because his claws had locked around the console edge. In the tracking feed, Harold's shuttle docked with the quarantine station. Filters unloaded. Medical packs transferred. Power cells delivered. 37 minutes later, the same small gray craft lifted again and began its return. No monster appeared. No miracle announced itself. No music played. A man had gone where others vanished because people there were running out of air. That was all. And somehow that was worse than legend. Vorath turned from the console and faced the cadets. Their earlier worship had drained away. What remained was quieter, heavier, and far more useful. "Remember this," he said. "Do not make him a myth. Myths let you stay weak because they belong to someone else." He looked back at the screen as Harold's shuttle crossed the distortion field again. "Study the work." The shuttle passed through safely. The final red warning marker blinked out. Bryn looked at Vorath. "So what is Harold?" Vorath watched the tiny ship approach the academy lights. For a long time, he could not answer. Then, very softly, he said, "A species that learned to carry fear like equipment." Outside, the shuttle touched down, and Harold stepped onto the landing deck with a dented crate under one arm, already checking the next delivery label.